Hello, everyone. How are you? Onegaishimasu. I hope everyone is very happy today. I'll read Shukshu number 1, our motto. Let us experience universal mind that loves and protects all creation and helps all things grow and develop. To know the unification of mind and body and be one with the universe is the ultimate purpose of my study. The 4 major principles to experience the unification of mind and body. Number 1, we rest in the one point in the lower abdomen. Number 2, we are completely relaxed. Number 3, our weight is naturally underside. And number 4, ki extends infinitely in all directions. So tonight our discussion is on the 5 principles of Shinshin Toitsu Aikido. And many people feel that this 5 principles is about techniques, how to do a technique. Well, I admit, yes, this is so, but on a very shallow level, yes, it's addressing this, but only as a metaphor. And in fact, all of the techniques in Aikido are supplied and practiced only as metaphors. If we don't understand that they're metaphors, then we really aren't. It's okay, but we're not receiving the full benefit that we might. Okay, so let's do a little deep breathing, and then we'll begin our discussion. Thank you. Let's begin with asking Sayaka Reasoner to read the 5 principles of Shinshin Toitsu Aikido in Japanese. Sayaka?
心身統一合気道の5原則。1、気が出ている。2、相手の心を知る。3、相手の気を尊ぶ。4、相手の立場に立つ。5、率先急行。
Okay, thank you very much. So I will follow the way I've been doing this. I'll read each of the 5 principles, first the old way translation and then the new translation. Number 1, old translation, ki is extending. And number 1, new translation, ki is extending. Number 2, know your opponent's mind. Old. New translation, know your partner's mind. Number 3, old translation, respect your opponent's ki. Number 3, new translation, respect your partner's ki. Old translation number 4, put yourself in your opponent's place. New translation number 4, put yourself in the place of your partner. And number 5, old translation, lead with confidence. New translation number 5, lead and move. So as I've said, so many times, when referring to these 2 translations, whoever did the original translations made a big effort to make it reasonable and applicable to modern English so that you would understand it. But that means that that person had an understanding themselves of Toi Sensei's teaching that they're trying to translate to you. So this time instead, I asked Sayaka to translate it exactly, literally word for word. So we have Toi Sensei's word, not someone else's word. Now, I will admit that on a number of occasions, I have to supply a word, an English word, because the translation is going to be confusing. Okay? But I believe it's much closer to what Toi Sensei was originally expressing to us. Remember, everything he writes is his effort to express to us and to give us an understanding of the experience that he's having. Because he has no other way. He can show us, but then that's sometimes not enough because we see what we want to see. And so he says words. But of course, this is all I have also, particularly right now, because of the Zoom technology. I cannot really show you with a partner these principles, but I think you know them well. So when I talk about them, you'll understand. Ki is extending, of course, speaks for itself. Know your partner's mind. We changed that word to partner from opponent. So what what Toi Sensei is teaching is non-dissension, right? So the whole point of learning how to interact with another human being is what we learn by practicing the techniques in the dojo and by practicing ki tests and kyatsu and weapons and meditation and ki breathing and all the other exercises that we do in the dojo. They're all designed to show us how to interact with another human being, right? So knowing that other human being's mind or state of mind is very important. Not because you need to use that knowledge to throw them. Not because you need to use that knowledge to manipulate them in some way or do something with them. This is not showing you how to win. This is not showing you how to be a hero. I had a friend. I have a friend who's a businessman, and every time I see him, he tells me stories about his wonderful success in business, how much money he's making, how he befuddled his opponents in business. And he says to me, I'm just doing this Aikido, right? I'm doing this Aikido that you do. And I'm always the winner. I always win. Who does that sound like to you? See, this is not Aikido. I don't tell him this is not Aikido. I let him think it's Aikido. Because he's not my student. He's my friend, business person. He's just trying to be friendly to me to say that it's Aikido. But this is a very common misunderstanding throughout the Aikido world. The most usual thing that we, the students of Koichi Toi Sensei, heard him say to us was, Chris, looks like you want to throw that person. That's what he would do. He'd walk around the dojo watching us do our techniques, and he would say, oh, it looks like you want to throw them. Meaning, that's your mistake. You think that Aikido techniques, you think that Aikido is about learning to throw someone. That's like what that businessman is doing. That's like thinking that when you meet a friend, the most important thing is to know how to throw them down, how to beat them, how to win over them. All right, so this is a big mistake, don't you think so? And so these 5 principles are teaching us how to not do that, not how to do that. So the next one, same thing. Respect your partner's ki. You can just say, respect your partner. Not respect your opponent, respect your partner. Respect the other person that you're with. Offer them respect. Truly respect them. Not show them respect so that they'll think that you're doing one thing when you're doing another. No, no, no. This is not trickery. This is genuinely from your heart. Respect them. And then put yourself in their place. Of course, we've heard that so many times in so many other ways. Walk a mile in that person's shoes. Put yourself in their place so that you know how they're feeling, what their point of view is. You cannot just force your point of view on someone. You need to know what their point of view is. Invite them to express it to you, and find ways that you can harmonize with that point of view, right? So this is because the whole point is to make friends. The point is not to win an argument. The point is not to win a political position. The point is not to win money. The point is not to win over anyone. The point is not to throw them at all, but to learn how to be friends with them. Someone asked me when I was away from Aikido one time, what is that Aikido thing all about you doing? And I said, it's about how to make friends with people. And they just thought I was kidding them. They thought I was nuts. That's not a martial art. How to make friends? What about when the enemy comes along? You have to kill him, don't you? So this is why the world is the way it is, because people have fighting mind. People have manipulative, aggressive minds. So look, let me read. I'm going to read something. Please forgive me, but I want to get it all. It's very short. I want to get it in the class. We say in Shinshin Aikido that there are three basic ways that human beings react to or respond to a challenge of any kind. I call them options. Option A, we react through power, utilizing the tools of strength, manipulation, money, knowledge, technique, etc., to get what we think we need, or what we deserve, or what we have a right to. This can be in reaction to a person, a country, a community, any form of governing, even anarchy itself, animals, weather, mountains, rivers, and forests. I could go on. Option B, we react through indolence and ignorance, hoping, often even praying, that someone else will come along and solve whatever the difficulty is for us, or simply not noticing that there is a problem there at all. And finally, option C is, instead of reacting, we respond by standing tall and connecting without an intention of any kind in our mind. This is standing like a mountain and proceeding with no wish, no needs, no requirement, and no expectation whatsoever. In this way, we allow non-separation to exist as it actually is already, with no effort to convince any other person of our need for them to recognize this. Okay, so thank you for letting me read that. We all have practiced option A, B, and C many times. If you've been in seminars with me, then you know. And with Shinichi Toi Sensei also does it often. And Toi Sensei used to do it too, all the time. Because this is basically, most of us in Aikido, when we're doing our techniques, are doing A or B, or some combination of A or B. But it's very difficult to move on to C, this business of connecting directly with no intention. You don't want to throw them, you don't want to win over them, you don't want to manipulate them. So that's what these 5 principles are asking you to do. Number 5 is lead and move. That's all. It says lead with confidence. That's good. I suppose that's good. But even that is more like a command and less like a description. So just like I always say, the principles are descriptions of how you will be if you're actually practicing Shinshin Toitsu Aikido, which is mind, body, unified Aikido. If we are practicing mind, body, unified Aikido, that's what we will do when we do techniques. Now, it's not what we should do. It's what we will be doing when we have mind, body unification. That's quite different, quite a different way of expressing it. So, Suzuki Sensei's, one of his favorite words was osairu, which he got from Toei Sensei. You don't hear that word very much anymore, do you? But I use it a lot in the dojo, but I mean, most people don't. I got it from Suzuki Sensei, and he particularly liked that teaching from Toei Sensei. Osairu means to hold or to cover. Or maybe, what does it say here? To capture. You can read that translation. But I like to think of it as embrace. When someone's standing in front of you with the intention of attacking you in some way, Toei Sensei says, you osairu them. You osairu them. O-S-A-I-R-U. Osairu. You embrace them. You include them. You cover them so that they're part of your world of experience. Well, this is really, when it says ki is extending, that's what's happening before anything happens. And then, these other 4 principles that happen: know your partner's mind, respect your opponent's ki, put yourself in the place of your opponent, and perform. Then these things don't happen like that. Maybe when you're practicing kaisho, right? So beginning Aikido movement, you might take yourself through those, like when you're doing katate dori, kokinagi, tenkan, right? You're doing tenkan undo, coming inside like this. So maybe you extend ki, you know your opponent's mind, your partner's mind, you respect your partner's ki, you put yourself in the place of your partner, and then you move. And then you lead and move. So maybe at kaisho you do that. But by the time you're doing sosho, it's instantaneous. When osairu basically means all 5 of these principles. Osairu means it's done before it starts. Sensei used to say, Ueshiba Sensei, the founder of Aikido, used to say, before you attack me, you are finished. It basically means, because you think to attack me, that's your downfall. So if I'm just neutral, if I'm just here standing with no intention, you're through, you're going down. That's what is the meaning of Aikido. Not winning. Not winning. It's very humble. So the 5 principles happen in no time. They don't happen in a time span that we could recognize in seconds. It's a recognition. When you see someone, it's a recognition. If someone comes up to you in the grocery store, or someone comes up to you in the dojo, or someone comes up to you at the beach, or someone comes up to you somewhere in your neighborhood, the minute you become aware of them, osairu. The minute you become aware of them, they're included automatically. So this is not something that you do in the beginning. Yes, you practice doing this, that's kaisho. But once you understand this principle of relationship, the minute you recognize someone's presence, that recognition must be embracing, must be non-dissension, must be non-fighting. So that's what these principles are telling us. Okay, so maybe that's enough for me to say right now. And maybe you'd like to say something. So I'd like to hear Carlos Boyer say something about this.
Hello, Sensei. Good
Oh.
evening. Thank you. Well, yes, include them in your experience. Last class, you talked about if we see ourselves as subject and the world as object, or of course, vice versa, the world is object and ourselves as subject, we're through, we're done. We can't keep one point. So that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We should be including, we should be embracing, we should be one. But, you know, it's not so easily done, right? We can say that, but my problem is that I don't experience it as such. You know, I do the practice, and yet fighting mind comes up, and yet subject-object comes up all the time. And so that's what I have to say about this, is that you make it sound so easy and simple, and yet here I am, right?
Yeah, so thank you. I'm sorry if I made it sound easy. It's not easy. You're right. It's very, very difficult. Listen, the oldest, Dogen, I don't know how many years ago Dogen lived, but it was like 5,000 years ago or something. What?
I think that was the 12th century, Sensei.
Wasn't that many thousands, but it was quite a while ago. And he said the oldest delusion of mankind is that there is self and other. That's it. Okay? So that's all of Toei Sensei's teaching is based on this. Of course, it has, the Japanese are very liberal in their religious practice. So even in the same home, they practice worship Buddha, but they worship Shinto also. And in Aikido itself, we have a lot of influence from Buddhism, but we also have a lot of influence from Shintoism. And the two live together very comfortably. There isn't any problem or contradiction, you know. And that's because the fundamental principle of each of those practices is that the delusion we all suffer under is that there is self and other. Of course, we've been like that since we were born. And every other human being we come across is practicing that same notion, is putting that same notion in their subconscious mind again and again and again, over and over. You know, I think as long as you're alive, this issue remains in your being. And in fact, in some way, it needs to, because you need to be able to find your way home at night. Don't you see? So it's not wrong, okay? It's a delusion. Now, a delusion is not wrong. A delusion is just a delusion. It's a misunderstanding. It's a piling everything in one pile. And it's not like that. We have to be able to live in the dual relative world and the non-dual absolute world, both at the same time. So recognizing and experiencing unification, but also realizing that there's another person that's starting to kick you or hit you or hold you. So it's not denying that that's happening. To say that the oldest delusion is self and other or subject object, okay, so that may be the case. But as long as you're in a body, you have to respect that. That's part of respecting your opponent's ki, respecting your other person. There is another person to respect, okay? But at the same time, You are the center of the universe. And the universe is made up of everybody and everything, all of nature, all of the universes, and all of the people. And you are the very center of that. How is that true? I can tell you, I can say in words like this, you hear me say it all the time. But of course, for each of us, we have to come gradually and in a deeper and deeper way to come to terms with this, to recognize this, to appreciate it, to be grateful for it. It's like when you want to win, that's a natural impulse. It's just that when you do it enough that you realize it doesn't work ultimately, then you know why Aikido works ultimately. Because it's non-dissension. It's not fighting. It's not achieving. It's empty of need, of requirement, of expectation. It's just being present with another person. It's just like being with your friend, just sitting there with your friend and not saying anything. So that's why I said my Aikido practice, how to be a friend, how to learn how to be a friend. When I started Aikido, I didn't know how to be a friend to anybody. I had no notion of it. I was only just collecting from me, from everybody. How to be a friend means how to support someone else, how to listen to them. You know. Okay, so thank you, Carlos. I talked a lot. Let's see. Can I ask Toby Vogels to say something, please?
Thank you, Sensei. Yes, you can. I'm struggling with this a lot. Like Carlos Boya Sensei said, it sounds all so simple. I started doing Aikido to become invincible, Sensei. When I was young, I wanted to become invincible. So I started to do martial arts, and I got really frustrated that last time you came to Europe, you spoke about how Toei Sensei said Aikido is not a martial art. So now I have no idea where to place it. So I love the Zoom classes and the ki classes because that is really separate from doing techniques, from training how to be invincible to actually seeing that the training is something different. But the moment we start doing techniques, the martial art things come to mind. And how to throw a partner, how to win from a partner, and so on. So the separation of the classes, that is clear. But the moment we start doing techniques, the martial art thing pops up.
You're very young. You're very young. You're a young man. So don't expect to be an old man when you're a young man. Be grateful that you're a young man and you have these problems. No, seriously, old people have these problems too. But I just don't feel, when I hear you talking about it, I don't feel it as a problem. I don't feel it like you do. You say this is a problem. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the universe is having its way with you, just like it is with me and every other person, in the way that you will allow it. Of course, these kind of classes are very helpful because we sort of attack this directly, or we approach it directly. We speak of it directly. We face it directly. When we're doing a lot of techniques, we're pretty much ignoring this part of it. But that's why Toei Sensei always wanted to have ki class first and then Aikido class. Because he knows this is a natural thing to be thinking about the technique you know, body dynamic and how to throw and how to move and how beautiful it is and how much fun it is. That's all great. That's fine. But just don't forget the ki class. So you share, and as you're sharing, you see your own shortcomings. This is true for all of us, not just Toby Vogels. When we're teaching, we see our own shortcomings. That's why everybody learns so much when they're a teacher, so much faster than when you're just a student. When you're a teacher, it goes into max drive, you know, it goes really starts getting heavy duty because you notice, because you have to say these things. So once you've been saying these things for 20 or 30 or 40 years and practicing through all those years, then things do begin to change. Trust me, they will begin to change. They're already changing. I know you I've known you for 20 years now, maybe longer than that, but I mean well, for maybe 20 years. You're not the same person you were 20 years ago. So this is kind of personal, but I mean, it's really true for everybody. Everybody's in this process. You never want to compare yourself with another person because it's fruitless. It just has nothing to do with anything. You are the center of your universe. You're the center of the universe that you inhabit. So everything you see is a reflection of your conditioning. It's a reflection of you. So we're surrounded by ourselves all the time. And we're looking at the way we think things are. We recognize things that way, the way our subconscious mind has been trained to. So naturally, it takes time. You know, Toi Sensei always gives us that example of a drop of water in a cup of tea. It takes many, many, many drops. And you know, you think about it, it never becomes clear. Even when it looks perfectly clear, it's not clear. There's still some tea in there. So that's what I mean when I say, as long as you're alive, it's gonna be there. It'll be here. It's here for all of us, always. But we're just so fortunate that we have this practice, see, because most people don't have this. Okay. I'd like to hear somebody from Maui, like, gee, are there Maui people here? Oh, hey, Tracy Reasoner. I'd like to hear you say something about this.
I thought you'd pick on me, Sensei. Anyway, I come from the military background, and in the military, what was so intriguing is that we were into close with and destroy, which then translated to me as subdue and control, which I really liked. So that was super attractive to me in Aikido. So all this other stuff, when people are talking about being martial, I'm like, no, let's just kill them. And then I went to, no, let's just control them because they don't know what they're doing. And these, this training is something that, speaks to me because I was just completely deluded. And I didn't understand. I mean, I morphed the principles to how I wanted to see them. And I consistently find myself looking, going, well, actually, I can interpret it this way. And it's just a constant struggle every day with that, and seeing the principles and just the ones you're talking about today, and the Aikido principles. And of course, it's not talking about technique, but I can tell you what, I can teach it like that, and really be good at it. And it's still just a struggle every day for me.
Okay, so we have 3 people telling us basically the same thing.
Right.
And I have to repeat that's That's not a problem. That is the process itself. Everybody, whether you've been in the military or not, everybody grows up in this world with a sense of separation between themselves and everyone else. And all the techniques in the world look to somebody who's separate as a way to dominate and control those other people so that they don't dominate and control me, right? That's the way everybody sees it. That's the way all of the books and movies and newspapers and television, that's all it is. On the news, that's all they talk about. So you've had a lot of company, the whole world, right? So it's very easy, and of course everyone grows up like this. So we're all having to deal with it. So we're all involved in this process at one stage or another. But again, it's not a comparison. It's not a contest to see who's at a higher stage. It's not like that, because it's really not so much higher as different, because we've all had such different backgrounds and such different input into our subconscious mind that what pops up out of us may be exactly the same in principle, but it has a whole different set of circumstances that created it, that went in to create that principle acting through us. And so when we practice Aikido, those things we have to notice for ourselves. Because as you said, we morph the principles to fit the way we see the world. And so we have to notice that we're doing that we're seeing things that way. And sometimes that's painful, and sometimes it's just confusing. And when it is painful or confusing, we just osairu it. We just embrace it. We just sit with it. We have to learn patience and gratitude. And with that, we can all continue in a very strong and useful way. Thank you, Tracy. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask regarding this? Rather than me just calling on people, because I have a lot more people I can call on. But if you have a question, please say something. Elima.
Sensei, we have a question from Russia. Andre is raising his hand from Russia.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see that. Andre, please.
Hello, Sensei. Hello, everyone. Today's conversation brought me to an idea that it's easy to forget that ki-aikido is very sharp instrument how to transform somebody's aggression into non-aggression state. If memory serves me well, Sensei Tohei Ueshiba said that it's important if somebody hits somebody, then aggression may stay in another person. And Aikido transforms aggression into non-aggression state. And one of the first things that I read in book of Koichi Tohei was that one technique of ki-aikido can kill a person. So I think it's really important to remember in daily life how fragile actually people are. In Russia, I met one sensei once. He's still actually doing Daitaryu, and you know that sensei also practice Daitaryu. And Daitaryu has kind of similar techniques, but the end of technique is very aggressive for the attacker. It really punishes the attacker. So this sensei told me that you doing this like Aikido or ki-aikido not to get in jail because you think, oh, I can hit person or do something like this. And so he falls on the ground, hit a stone by his head, and now he's dead. And what will you do with this problem? You can't solve it. So ki-aikido gives us an instrument how to overcome such situation and to grow and understand the world, how actually we are fragile.
Okay.
That's,
Do you have a question there? I mean, that's very nice what you're talking about. Yes, Aikido does offer that, but exactly how? You see, like let me just tell you a real short little story here. My daughter's married to a Brazilian man from Rio de Janeiro, and when he immigrated to Hawaii, he came with his two best friends. One of them teaches capoeira, and the other one teaches Brazilian jiu-jitsu. The jiu-jitsu guy is big. He's several inches taller than me and wider than me and much bigger than me. And but I'm 8th Dan Aikido. They're not 8th Dan yet. So they're very curious at what's going on over there because I'm not talking about Aikido. So we're sitting out here on the deck one night, and the jiu-jitsu guy stands up and says, well, what would you do? You know, jiu-jitsu is very powerful. And this guy's a very powerful guy. What would you do if I grabbed you? And I said, may I stand up? And he went, yes. We're just in our street clothes and we're on the deck. And I walked over to him and I stood very, very close to him. I put my body this way against him, so his face was here. And he said, oh, okay, I understand. Thank you. He sat down. So that's what you're talking about, but it doesn't need technique to be performed. Okay?
yes, but I meant that remembering how fragile people are is a good way for understanding the principle of respecting partner's ki.
Remembering to remember how fragile people are. How fragile.
Yes, and so to respect others and put ourselves into their place. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have a question?
I had a question, Sensei. I'll try to keep it quick. But I enjoyed hearing you talk about the concept of osairu and how that applies to the principles that we talked about today. But one thing that I've been challenged by, and maybe others have too, is that we're not training in person at the moment. And that for many of us, it might be much more challenging to connect and feel that connection with the other person or even the group virtually like we're doing right now. So do you have any practical advice for how you can still experience that feeling of osairu with your partner when you're not actually face-to-face, but interacting across a screen?
Well, okay, thank you. That's a good question. I feel that when I said when you recognize someone's presence, then automatically osairu happens. It's all these principles I said are kind of instantaneous. It's called recognition. But recognizing what, you know? So I think even when we're on Zoom like this, when I recognize you, it's not just, oh, there's Ilima, but what it is, I mean, I recognize Ilima, but all of this other part of my training, all of this part of my life also comes up right away. So I'm present and attentive and listening, and this is osairu. Even though it's, I don't think it's very different. You know, when we started doing this, someone told me, they asked their teacher about doing Zoom with me, and their teacher told them, that's useless because no more ki. I don't agree. I thought maybe that's true, but I feel that this is very, don't you, some of you, don't you feel this is quite connected? I feel very strongly your presence. I recognize your ki. I can practice these 5 principles with you right now, even though it's a tech thing, even though it's Zoom. You know, there are drawbacks. I would rather be in the dojo to teach something like this 5 principles. As Tracy said, it's great fun to teach them as a technique. And so that should also be, I mean, if we can, we just can't do that right now. Does that help? It's
Thank you, Sensei.
what?
Thank you.
Okay. So this is, yeah, everybody says, oh, this is really difficult. Yeah, it's really difficult. But so thank God that we get to practice it, because if it weren't difficult, it wouldn't be worth practicing, would it? We give our whole life to this, and it changes us fundamentally as human beings. And the older you get and the more you practice, the more you recognize how powerful and transformative this kind of practice is. So I'm really glad every time I see you come to this class, every time I recognize you here. So thank you for coming. And may I say one other thing before you go? I know it's 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock. So today I announced, maybe some of you heard, some of you didn't, we're gonna reopen our Shinshin Kan Maui Dojo in July, the first week of July. And so from then on, there will be a Monday that we will continue Tracy Reasoner Sensei's Monday night Zoom class, covering the training manual. And we will continue this class, the Friday night discussion group class. But from July on, I will do the Wednesday night meditation and Sunday morning meditation and weapons training in the dojo, because I feel I owe to the Maui students, you know, we need to train in the dojo. So we'll start doing that. And so from that time on, there'll only be 2 Zoom classes per week, Monday and Friday. Tracy on Monday and me on Friday. Well, I hope that's all right with you and you can adjust to that. I want to thank you again, and domo arigatou gozaimasu.